Charles is a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis and a member of our Missouri Beta chapter. After graduation, Charles joined the Marine Corps and served as a captain for over 4 years in the Marine Corps before getting his MBA at the Carlson School for Management, which named after the same Carlson that our Carlson Leadership Academy is named after. Fun fact there, SIGEP. Charles then went on to serve at the Boston Consulting Group, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world, and is now the director of bank strategy for USAA. So we're very excited to have Charles here to share with you a little bit more about his experiences and the way in which project management shows up for him. Once he has completed his, kind of sharing some of his stories and tips, you'll get the opportunity to ask Charles questions. We'll do a Q&A, and then we'll break out to our cohorts where you will engage with other vice presidents of programming from across the country. But now I will hand the reins over to Charles to present to you all.
Thank you so much. And Ben, if you just a quick note, the screen sharing is disabled, so if you could re-enable that permission for me.
Will do.
And good evening, everyone. And thanks a lot for the introduction. As Ben said, my name is Charles. I'm very excited to be speaking with you all this evening to share some of the lessons that I've learned in project management over my career, both in the Marine Corps, at BCG, and at USAA. As he mentioned, I am a brother from Missouri Beta, which just recently got rechartered, which is pretty great. It's a very exciting news happening down there. And so when I wanted to get some time today, I really figured from each of the places that I've had so far in my career, it probably would be valuable if I could just pull the most salient lesson, one from each of those stops along the way, and share those with you today. And so I'm going to start with the first lesson, and it's that decisions should be made at the lowest appropriate level. And this is a lesson from my time in the Marine Corps. As you can see in the picture there, I used to be a lot larger physically. I do kind of miss those days, being able to eat whatever I wanted and run for days on end. But one of the things that makes the Marine Corps so successful as a warfighting institution is this idea of small unit leadership. As you can imagine, given the breadth of different obstacles that we actually face in the field, whether it's working with the Afghan National Police in Afghanistan or in Haiti doing disaster relief, you're going to see a lot of things on the ground that are confusing, that are ambiguous, and you need to make a decision at that moment on what the best path forward is for you and for the people that you're leading. And you do not have time to run every single one of those decisions up the chain of command all the way up to the Pentagon, right? And so you have to be able to give people space to work and space to operate in their area of responsibility. And so when you think about projects, the larger the project is, the more important it's going to be upfront to decide what decisions you're going to let people make and what decisions need to come back to the central office that's managing the entire project. Well, when you may see this in a corporate setting is when you talk about doing any kind of third-party contracting or suppliers, for example. It's very common for organizations to have a rule where the contract is less than $1 million or less than $500,000. That contract does not have to be negotiated centrally. You don't have to run everything about that contract up some central chain. They just give you the power to execute on those, because otherwise you'd be getting into situations where it takes months to review a basic contract about doing maintenance on a property, because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these different things that have to go through one central organizing body. And so again, whatever the lowest appropriate level is for a decision, make sure that you think about that up front and try to engage some decentralized decision making so you can take some of the bureaucracy out of the process. Project management sometimes gets a bad rap because of this, right? When people think of project management, they think of, oh, these are just people that are going to tell me what I can and can't do. They're always going to be in the way. They're going to actually get in the way of the work. And one way to overcome that perception and that reality is by thinking of this upfront. Moving on, this is a lesson from my time at BCG. You definitely have to divide all your projects into manageable parts. For me at the time, I thought that a manageable part was an entire tomahawk ribeye. Turns out I can't eat that all in one bite, but I sure to give it a shot. And one of the acronyms that's very, very popular in the consulting world, and it actually came from McKinsey, is this idea of making things that are MECE. MECE, that acronym at the bottom you see there, stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So to help visualize this, think about a puzzle. And so every puzzle that you have, right, whether it's 1,000 pieces or 500 pieces, every single one of those pieces is unique. What's being represented for the picture that you're building from that piece of the puzzle is there's no overlap with any other piece. And yet if you take all the pieces and you put them all together, they're collectively exhaustive and they form the entire picture. And so for whatever project that you're looking to manage, you have to think about what are the right pieces, the pieces that don't have overlap, so that all the leaders that you've empowered with decentralized decision-making aren't going to cross over each other. But you also have to make sure that as you divide all the work into pieces into different work streams or swim lanes or whatever terms you want to use, you do need to make sure that you do cover everything that needs to be covered and that nothing falls between the cracks. And this is an important lesson, not just for project management, but also for problem solving, which is obviously what BCG, McKinsey, Bain, all the big consulting firms are known for. And no matter how large of a problem you're trying to solve, if you can actually break that problem down into its constituent parts and attack them one by one, anything is possible. That's how all the big, hairy, complex, ambiguous problems in the world have to be solved. You think of that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And so I've had the opportunity at BCG to travel all over the world and try to solve some really tough problems. One of the favorite projects that I had actually took me, ironically, back to the Middle East, working with one of our military allies, and they were doing a complete soup to nut reformation of their entire Ministry of Defense. And so when you just say those words, it's very deflating. How in the world do you reform an entire Ministry of Defense? We're talking about billions and billions of dollars of spending and hundreds of thousands of people spread all over the world, not just in a country, in all kinds of functions, right? You have their version of an Air Force, you have their version of a Marine Corps, their version of an Army, they have all their subunits, right? If you just try to think of that entire problem as one big not to solve, you're going to fail. And so the first thing that BCG has to do in a situation like that is make the different swim lanes and say, you're gonna go after recruiting problems, and you're gonna go after procurement problems, and you're gonna go after the retirement plans and the career path and the different developments, right? And that's all just within HR. So if you break all those pieces down, you assign smart or motivated people to that. Preferably you can find smart and motivated, but when you're in a pinch, one or the other will do, and actually push those projects. You can break that problem down and find a lot of big progress. And that leads me to the final lesson, which is something that I've been coming into more here at USAA, is you also have to control for human nature. Large projects that take a long time, that are very complicated and will take you possibly years to accomplish, human nature says that you're going to lose attention. Everyone will start something really, really excited. And then after the weeks go by, after the months go by, it's really, really hard to maintain that level of momentum, to maintain that motivation. Other fires come up that you want to put out, life happens, the economy changes, industry changes, and pandemic hits, who knows? But you have to think about these things in advance. You have to think and remember that people's attention is going to wane and their motivation is going to wane. Their ability to focus 100% on the project that you're managing is also going to wane. And so now that I'm part of a large organization, running bank strategy for an organization with 35,000 people and $90 billion of assets with 12 million members, there are no more easy projects. There are no more short projects. One of the nice things about BCG in the Marine Corps is that the missions or the cases were more short-term in nature, right? You're talking about a couple months here, a couple months there, fly in, handle it, get out. It's not how it works at large organizations. I'm involved in running a pretty large expense reduction project that's going to take 3 or 4 years. And there's no way to have success over a 3 to 4 year period if I've not thought about what the reporting and monitoring processes are going to be. If I've not thought about how we're going to have governance of this, if I've not thought about how I'm going to hold people responsible and be able to show progress along the way to know if I'm actually making progress toward the goal that you set up front. You're all smart people. All of you have chosen to join SIGEP, so I'll take that as a given. But so we know we never start a project without an end goal. That's a given. What people often forget to do is make checkpoints and milestones along the way, ways to be able to celebrate wins, and also to have a leading indicator for when things are going off track, and give you the chance to actually intervene and keep things moving at the right time. And so this can take, in the corporate world, the most popular tool to affect this is something like a scorecard. You work in corporate America long enough and scorecard almost becomes a cuss word, but they're effective. And that's one reason why they're so ubiquitous. And so you have to think about, okay, at this year, if we thought that we wanted to take out $100 million in cost over a 5-year period, in year one, we're hoping to see 15 million. And not just 15 million, but because we've done the BCG thing and we've broken the project into parts, it's not 15 million for the whole project. It's 3 million for the credit card business and $2 million for deposits and $3 million for shared services or whatever your different units of measurement are. And once you've assigned those leaders and told them that their target for this year is $2 million, you also have to give them the power to go achieve that $2 million in the best way possible. Because right up front, when you're planning a 5-year project, you may think the answer to taking out costs in a certain factory is going to be about, it's going to be all procurement. We can lean on our suppliers, we can get cheaper parts. That's going to be the answer. Well, you may find out 6 months in, 8 months in, 10 months in, after rounds of negotiations are going on, that the places that you thought you were going to find savings are incorrect. And instead of having to remake the entire plan for everybody in a big centralized fashion, again, apply lesson number 1, decentralized decision making, and give those captains, give those workstream leaders, give those swim lane leaders the ability to shift around and find the savings that they need to find. Or, of course, escalate if it's going to be impossible, right? And so when you think of all 3 of these lessons together, decentralized decision making, breaking problems down into their constituent parts, and also having reporting, monitoring, and governance process in place, any project that you have is going to have a much greater chance of success if you apply all 3 of these. If I was to be asked which of these 3 is the most important, I would probably say number 3, the final one about reporting and monitoring, because it turns out that people are motivated by usually their jobs, right? And so if nothing else, if you have a project and you're just constantly bird dogging people and asking for status updates and knowing when they're off track and asking them when they're going to get back on track, more often than not, people will figure it out because they don't want to look bad, because they want to accomplish the mission, because they don't want to be fired. Whatever their own internal motivations are going to be, you don't have to worry about that as long as you are on top of tracking everything that's going on. So if you can only pick one, probably the final one, and then you have to trust the people that were hired to get the job done. But your life will definitely be easier if you take all 3 in conjunction with one another. And with that, Ben, I'll leave this up just to be a reminder what the lessons are.
Yeah. Charles, thanks so much for sharing those lessons. And I mean, you have such a cool wealth of experience already, and great to hear how those all came up in your life. As the undergraduates are starting to think of some questions that they might have for you, I want to throw one out based on kind of where I think some of their heads might be. a lot of these guys ran about 2 months ago, and they probably ran for their positions with uh, a lot of big ideas and change in mind, and they've run into some roadblocks within their chapter. That change is hard. Why don't we just do all the programs that we did last year? Why don't we just do what we've always done? What's your advice for driving change in an organization?
That's a great question, and it's a challenge that you see a lot. And so, considering that everyone is new to their positions and recently got them, you probably still have time to do something in the consulting speak we call achieving buy-in. And so, if you were elected to your positions based on the kind of the change platform that you've asked for, there should be some assumption of buy-in. And so as you're encountering some of the inertia of change, because again, you're right, change is hard. One of the things that you can do is remind everyone that they bought into this vision, that they bought into this idea of improvement, and then listen to them and try to figure out what exactly it is that's causing resistance now when there wasn't resistance a month ago, when there wasn't resistance 2 months ago. Is it simply that, has the environment actually changed, or are people just now busy with finals and that was the case 2 months ago? Or is it just inertia that you can just kind of work your way and plow through? One of the things that helps with inertia is, again, this idea of reporting and monitoring. If you're able to show progress along the way, that does a lot to helping motivate people and to convincing some of the doubters that they should continue to work towards whatever you're trying to accomplish, because there actually have been payoffs along the way. And so if one of the things you're working on is adjusting the recruiting processes for pledging, having people come through to try to improve the numbers, don't just wait until the end of the entire cycle to say how many people you have in the new class. Find some interim milestones. How many people show up to the initial rush events? Can you track that and show an improvement year over year? Yes or no? That could be one way to help show people that things are working. Or if you start a new program where there's a lot of one-on-one connections between some of the senior brothers and junior brothers for career advice or for internship advice or things like that, how many people actually participated? Did you achieve your goal in having people sign up, or did you not? These are all things that you can bring up at chapter and kind of throw off as stats to show that progress is being made and help fight some of that inertia and push through some of those roadblocks.
I think that's great. In a lot of my work with chapters, we're really good at creating big goals, but we're not necessarily as good at creating the progress goals. Where do we want to be in a week versus in a year? And I think that's great advice to set those up. Guys, as you have questions, please throw them in the chat. That is why Charles is here, to be able to answer things that are on your mind specifically. Just for me to continue, kind of one thing that I thought was really great that you brought up was this idea of you ideally want smart and motivated people, but if at least you have one, that's a good place to start. Let's assume that because everybody chose to be a SIGEP, they're all smart. What's the best way to motivate smart people to accomplish a task?
That is a completely other topic, and there's no way I can cover all the different ways to motivate people. What I can do is give a brief way to motivate from each of these 3 career piss-ups that I've had so far in the Marine Corps, and at times during your return experience. The way to motivate people was yelling at them and really drawing out some emotion and putting a little bit of fear into them. That works in some contexts. It doesn't work in others. More seriously, one of the things that keeps people motivated in the Marine Corps is the mission, right? Everyone volunteered. We're not a country with mandatory service. So everyone is there. They chose to be there for a reason. And reminding them, sometimes forcefully, of their commitment can be one way to help motivate people. At BCG, it works a little bit differently. At BCG, people are very, very motivated by their career and what's in it for them and what the future holds, right? It's no secret that that is a high burn career with a lot of stress and a lot of hours, but there's also a lot of money. And some of the things people go on to go do after that career are pretty amazing and pretty unique. I mean, even some of the experiences that I had at BCG are things that most people will never get to experience. And so for something like that, you have to remind them of what the end game is. And so, if you have volunteered at your chapter to be in a leadership position, there is a reason that you did this. Is it because you want to be the fraternity president later? Is it because you're trying to pad your application for grad school? Is it you're actually a nice person and want to make a difference? Whatever that motivation is, remind them of what's in it for them would probably be the BCG lesson. And then for USAA, USAA is a special place. It's a giant bank, close to $100 billion in assets, but it is a nonprofit. And that's really crazy and weird to think about. But at USAA, our members are the mission there. And so it's actually really motivated. It's actually really easy to keep people motivated in this giant corporation because in the end, you can tie whatever you're doing back to how it helps members, to how it's helping people, who are in the service or who are veterans, guard their financial wellness and safeguard their financial needs, be able to pay their bills, be able to save for their kids' college, whatever it is. There are so many different ways that you can plug your work into that member that's at the forefront. But those are only 3 different ways to motivate people. I mean, human beings are very complex. There's 1,000 self-help books out there on motivation, but that's my 3-minute attempt at it.
That's great. And every person if we're talking about these guys' committees, everybody's going to be motivated a little bit differently, but you provided 3 great examples. Looks like we just got a question from Nathan from Colorado School of Mines. How would you handle in this? For him, it's a member that might not completely agree with the mission that the exec board is trying to establish. So what do you do when there's somebody on the team that isn't totally bought into the new direction that the leadership is going?
Yeah. It's a very common problem. So luckily for you, the way that you handle this and the lessons that you learn will help you going forward. The first thing that you have to do is, I'll steal a phrase from one of the people that influenced me. You have to come from curious, right? So whatever concerns they're raising, take them seriously. Ask them why they don't agree, but don't ask them in a way where it's obvious that you're looking for their argument so you can immediately provide counters. Because for all you know, they have legitimate reasons to doubt the direction, and there could be actual problems. And odds are they're not the only person who has reservations. And so if you can actually approach them neutrally and come from curious and actually draw out what the problems are, that's going to be the first thing that you need to handle, because I'll tell you from experience, half the time people just want to be heard. And if they feel like they were heard and they feel like their concerns were acknowledged, half the time that'll handle it. Even if you don't make any changes, even if you don't give them what they want or what they're looking for, just the fact that they were acknowledged and that they were taken seriously can help soothe over any potential problems. So that's number one. And then number 2, you have to respond to their problems one by one. And if they're wrong, lay out why they're wrong, lay it out without resorting to any kind of personal attacks. And then you have to give them an out and say, you know what, this is something that you don't agree with. We understand. We've talked about your concerns. We've talked about what we could do to address them. If you can't get on board, we're obviously happy to replace is the wrong word, but we're happy to think of a way to work together forward where you're not going to hold us back and we're not going to force you to do something that you don't want to do. And so whether that means just working on other things completely, or it means changing their position, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but ultimately that's where you would get to. And you can't be afraid to go there. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think that it is. And if Nathan wants to come off mute and share his thoughts, he certainly can. Awesome. Nathan responds affirmatively.
Okay.
So, Charles, the vice presidents of programming in a couple minutes are going to go off into their small group cohorts. We have a member of USAA sharing his thanks. So we'll go with this question as kind of our last one. Awards and celebrations. It's a good way to encourage and raise morale. What are some ways that you use awards and celebration to get the most out of your team?
All three of these organizations on the screen have some really great, awesome, unique ways of doing awards and celebrations. In the Marine Corps, we have a long history of traditions that date back 200 years of mess nights and celebrating the Marine Corps Ball. A lot of food, a lot of drink, a lot of fraternal love. And so you can never go wrong with just having an event and get a bunch of food and drink and just being together, right? That's timeless. It's a classic. It always works. BCG, because you work on a lot of small teams really intensely for 4 weeks or 6 months on a project, BCG is really big on mementos. And so every case that I've been on, some sort of object is given to you afterwards to kind of commemorate your time with the team. And I'll grab one right here. And so I've got a 1-star Dragon Ball here from one of my teams because we spent a lot of time overseas in East Asia. And a few of us on the team were really big in anime. And so that became a team gift. I've got little plaques and just something to commemorate finishing a project, right? And USAA is the same way. And USAA is really big on service anniversaries. It's an organization that not just values its members, it values its employees. And so at my 1-year mark, my 3-year mark, my 5-year mark, et cetera, 10-year, 20-year, 50-year mark as employees, employees get a personalized message from the CEO along with a coin. Here's one of them. Some sort of coin as this little memento, again, just to recognize your years of service there. And so in short, give people stuff and do it more often than you think. So again, anything that you can do to celebrate the end of a successful project, just some little personalized memento, right? Like if I went to the leadership of BCG and showed them that I have a Dragon Ball, half of them would have no idea what a Dragon Ball is. Some of you may not know what a Dragon Ball is, but it's meaningful to the team. All right, it doesn't have to be expensive, but it does have to be unique to the experience that you went through. And so just some sort of small token at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, at the end of a project goes a long way, and it helps people decorate their home offices, if nothing else.
I love that. And I think what we celebrate is extremely important too. So the completion of a project, the work that everybody did to come together and get something done is really great. So again, the undergraduates are going to move into their cohorts. Charles, I'll give you any final words that you have for everybody.
I'm just really excited to see the fraternity continue to be so successful. I'm very excited to see events like this happen, even with COVID, without the ability to get together in every state. The fact that you're all taking time out of your day to be involved, to try to seek some self-improvement is exactly what being a brother here is all about. And as you can see, it's a lifelong journey. You've got Ben here continuing to do things post-graduation. You've got me, you have our facilitators. We're all rooting for you. And if there's any way that we can help, obviously feel free to reach out.